million supplemental war effort for the soldiers in Iraq and some charitable relief for the tsunami disaster. Two very well-meaning measures that's difficult for anyone to vote against. Late one night, attached to it was an amendment implementing the Real ID Act. What is the Real ID Act? It says originally it was supposed to be effective in May of 2008. We've been able to delay that to December of 2009. It says you will need a real ID card before you can board a federally regulated aircraft, before you can enter any federal building or any nuclear power plant. How do you get a real ID card? You have to go to your Department of Revenue, to your fee office, and get a new driver's license. To get this, you have to present your original birth certificate, a Social Security card, your proof of residency, and a photo. Nothing wrong with that. We already do that here in the state of Missouri. We've already implemented that. However, the state of Missouri will copy all your information. They're going to put it in a digital data file and keep it for 10 years. That's bad enough. You have thousands of state employees that have access to it. Not only that, they're going to link this to all other states. Everybody in other states will have access to it. How secure is this data? Every day we hear of hard drives being lost. In fact, I could take something like this simple ordinary pen here. It happens to be a laser pen, and any employee could take to work with them. Until I unscrew the pen here, and we have here a jump drive. You know what a jump drive is? An employee could plug that into the computer at work, depending upon the storage capacity, download the information on 100,000, 150,000 employees. Very easy to steal your personal data. Companies have difficulty every day protecting it, let alone trying to depend upon our state government to protect our personal identity. They said that this was supposed to stop terrorists and illegals. This does nothing to stop terrorists. It's only a method of tracking the citizens of this country. Also required, when you get your driver's license, it has to have a 2D barcode on the back of it. If anyone ever looked at their driver's license, they probably don't know what's on the back of it. If it had a 1D barcode, and we're all familiar with what a 1D barcode is, that's what they use. UPS uses, anybody that check out of a supermarket, convenience store, they scan it and they read information on it. That 1D barcode could easily hold all the information that's on the front of your driver's license. Your name, your address, your hair color, and all that. However, a 2D barcode is required to be on the back of it. Why would they want a 2D barcode on it? For one thing, the 2D barcode will hold a tremendous amount of information. This 2D barcode will hold all the information instead of encyclopedia. Or you could encode every phone number in the city and state of New York on it. So what does that mean? That means the Department of Homeland Security has other plans for the use of this card. They intend for you to use this card in the future. Every time you make a transaction, you go to the bank, go to the pharmacy, to use this card. That means exactly where you are. Originally, they were going to require an RFID chip to be implanted in it. Right now, it's not required, except if they recommend it. An RFID chip in it. We have those chips in our car, in our identification cards when we come in here. If you use your card to come in from the garage there, you wave it, it recognizes that. Once they put the RFID chip in it, it'll hold all your information on it. But it's very easy to steal that information. Obviously, if you have a reader, you could download to read the information on it. That's why it's an outright threat to our personal information, our personal privacy, if we allow this to go on. That's why it's so important that we reject this Real ID card. As I said, it's not to catch terrorists. It's not to use to catch illegals. For one thing, those coming into this country with a passport, we have no way of knowing whether those passports are legal or not. We've got documentation that's easy for them to get a false passport to come this way. So the whole intent is to track or keep track of the citizens of this country. Presently, 26 states have passed legislation in one form or another to reject this. 11 states have actually changed their state law to reject it, as House Bill 361, I hope will do. It says that Missouri will join the other states and reject this. For one thing, the Real ID Act violates our Constitution. It violates the First Amendment. We all raised our hand and we swore to uphold the Constitution of Missouri and the United States. There is no religious exclusion in the Real ID Act. Some religions object to having their picture or their number to identify them. They say that no longer will that be the case. It violates the Fourth Amendment, the protection of our papers and effects. No way can they protect that if they take our information, put a data file that they can no longer protect it. And the one we just talked about, the 10th Amendment, states' rights issue, whereas the federal government has the constitutional right to put the mandate up on us that we have to start carrying an ID card around with us. I think it's very imperative that we pass this. One of the people who's going to testify could not be here this morning. He works in law enforcement down at Raleigh. He worked for a large telephone company for 2 or 3 years, a few years ago. They merged and became the largest landline telephone company in the United States. His job there, he personally had access to 12 million accounts. He was able to have access to the name, date of birth, and social security number. Over the 2 years that he worked there, he had access to over 50,000 accounts at that time. And there was 1,000 people working in there. Not much different than if our data was put in a revenues digital data file here. The Real ID would create a mega database similar to that. Tens of thousands of people have access to your personal information that's in there. Below here, there is some, to give you an example of how insecure our data is, here's a few examples of the breaches in security that's happened in large private and government databases. The TJX company has $94 million of credit card discrepancies right now that's been breached. Visa, MasterCard, American Express has $40 million. American Online, $30 million. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, $26,500,000. On down the line. In May of 3rd, 2006, a laptop with the Social Security numbers of 26 million veterans was stolen. This past presidential election, the passport files of McCain, Obama, and Clinton were improperly accessed. If they can't even protect theirs, how is our own government going to protect their own personal information? We do not need Big Brother watching us, knowing where we are. That's why it's imperative that we pass House Bill 361 to protect our privacy and also stop the federal government from getting into our private lives. With that, I will stop and be glad to take any questions.